Welcome back to the show. Today we need to talk about Uganda because right now the political script isn't just being flipped, it is being entirely written on the fly. If you have been watching the headlines, something heavy is hanging in the air. It's that awkward, tense moment when the institutional facade is cracking and everyone in the room knows it. Let's start with a quote that perfectly captures the architectural flow of what's happening right now. Honorable Basalirwa put it bluntly: if you don't play politics by the law, then you are creating room to play politics outside them. Think about that. The law isn't just a set of arbitrary restrictions, it's the guardrails. When you ignore the rules of the game to suit your immediate power dynamics, you don't destroy the game, you just move it to the Wild West. And in the Wild West, whoever has the biggest boat makes the rules.
You don't play politics by the law, then you are creating room to play politics outside the law. It's a direct consequence. So I would advise and I would call upon everybody to ensure that we stick to politics of the law. If you want to arrest somebody, for God's sake, you can effect an arrest in accordance with the law. If you want to punish anybody, they can be punished in accordance with the law. But never should we ever allow as a country to degenerate into rule of the jungle. It is not good for anybody, including those perpetrating it or those benefiting from it. It's counterproductive. So I want to appeal to all of us to stick, to adhere to what our constitutional framework directs and commands.
Speaking of rules and institutions, let's talk about a viral piece of commentary that perfectly illustrates how the formal structure of government is rubbing up against its raw de facto political power. An analyst named Kiiza Leonard posted an incredibly sharp breakdown on X. You can see it here, where he called out what he views as a total butchering of the Ugandan democratic dream. He attaches an official document detailing the national order of precedence. Number 1 is the president. Number 2 is the vice president. Number 3 is the speaker of parliament. Number 7 is the deputy speaker. But Kiiza points out a jarring paradox. He notes that when number 3, the speaker, and number 7, the deputy speaker, essentially act as envoys or subordinates to someone way down the official ladder, whom he refers to as number 28, that is CDF. They are effectively elevating that person to number 2, who is number 28 in this dynamic. It's a thinly veiled reference to General Muhoozi Kangaba. Kiiza's stain is lethal here. He says it's absurd to see leaders wearing those traditional funny wigs and gowns of parliament purporting to safeguard democracy, while in reality they have completely bent the knee to an alternate power structure. It breaks the constitutional chain of command. When the people holding the gravels are taking cues from a military general, the institutional robes just become a custom. And you must remember, Kiiza is referring to the appointment of Jacob Obote, the Speaker of the Republic of Uganda, and Thomas Tayeba, the Deputy Speaker, into being members of PLU, and they will be led by Muhoozi Kainerugaba. And how does the general view this institution? Well, Muhoozi doesn't hide his hand. If you look at his own words from his official handle, he states, "I absolutely never have believed in inevitability and a legal profession in Uganda that is dedicated to the destruction of the 1986 revolution. Transition, the revolution, the power structure established when the National Resistance Army took power in 1986. Trumps the legal system. If the law or the legal profession gets in the way of protecting the legacy, the law loses." It's an explicit validation of exactly what Basalirwa was warning us about: politics outside the law. This brings us to a massive, loaded warning from the international community. the outgoing deputy head of the EU mission in Uganda, Guillaume Chatrain, didn't hold back at his farewell party. He delivered a stinging parting shot that should be ringing alarm bells in Kampala. He said Uganda risks becoming a caricature of itself if the apparent transition question isn't handled deliberately. A caricature, a distorted, exaggerated intimidation of a functioning state when the transition of power from President Museveni to whatever comes next looks like less a constitutional process and more like a family handoff or a military maneuver. The rest of the world stops taking your democratic institutions seriously. But what does this feel like on the ground? Because if you walk through Kampala right now, things might look calm, the shops are open, traffic is moving, but don't mistake that for peace.
It's intersection of everything that matters in the world of today. And in the coming years, Uganda will face a choice that is not unique, but it's particularly sharp here. It will have to decide between the country it actually is, a country that is plural, that is dynamic, that is complicated, or a simplified version of it that is easier to manage, easier to govern, but with a social price. And as I was saying, our job is always to try to resist to the temptation. And I hope that Uganda will also resist to be the caricature of what it should not be. Because caricature is always tempting, but it's always a dead end. So I've spent 4 years trying to resist that in my reporting, to give Brussels something that is perhaps more difficult to digest, but more honest than the short-end briefing. And I hope that in the years ahead, Uganda will avoid falling into the trap of becoming its own caricature, in how it presents itself, in how it makes its choice, and in how it manages the extraordinary transition that is already underway. The country deserves the complexity on its own reality, and the people of Uganda as well deserve this complexity. So I want to thank you, all of you, again for these beautiful years that we spent together, and I'm sure it's just an au revoir tonight, and we will see each other.
And if you mistake that for peace, Winnie, Kiiza, a powerhouse and transitional justice expert, contextualized this beautifully on social media. If you look at her post, she warns us about the illusion of stability. She notes that as an expert in transitional justice, she is intimately familiar with this specific kind of silence. It's not that the public is silent on what's going wrong. They are carrying a deep pain that keeps them quiet. Kiiza writes that it is increasingly easy to mistake the silence for peace, but it's actually transition being beneath the surface. And then she gives us a historical reality check. One day, something seemingly minor, like the price of bread going up, triggers an explosion. That is the danger of bottle up, multi-year danger. The English call it the calm before the storm. In her own words, she signs off with Ate Huwo Babera Taberata Fuka, meaning at that point, people become completely ungovernable. When you line these pieces up, the mosaic is clear. On one side, you have the formal order of procedure being dismantled by actors in wigs and gowns, bowing to military authority. On the other side, you have a general openly admitting he doesn't believe the legal profession is inviolable if it threatens the status quo. Overlay that with an international community warning again is becoming a caricature, and a population whose quietness isn't contentment, but rather the slow burning fuse of a pressure cooker. If you don't play politics by the law, you create a lawless space. And history shows us that the problem with lawless spaces is that nobody can predict who survives the storm once it breaks. That's it for today's episode. Keep your eyes on the script because the actors are starting to ad lib. See you next time if they click their mouse.